In late April 2025, the Ukrainian President, Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky, was welcomed in Pretoria, the Union Buildings, by the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa for historic visit, the first by the Ukrainian head of state in 33 years since the post-apartheid establishment of diplomatic relations. The visit comes at a pivotal time in the history of Ukraine, signaling a dramatic improvement in the once strained relations between the two countries. In our studios today, we have been graced by the presence of Her Excellency Abravitova. I've been practicing this name since 2017. She is the ambassador of Ukraine to South Africa, and she is here to speak to us about the outcomes and the key messages that stemmed from that visit by the President of Ukraine to the Republic of South Africa. So I would like to welcome you to Ubuntu Radio once again. It's been years since we saw each other. We were in the studio in August 2017. It's good to see you back here.
Good to see you, my dear, and it's a great honor and pleasure to come back to Ubuntu Radio.
I believe before we get into today's matter, it would be nice to bring us up to speed. When you came here back in 2017, you were still fairly new, you were chargé, and now you are the ambassador.
Yeah, I have a very extraordinary journey, and maybe not many countries can have such a practice when the deputy head of mission is receiving the upgrade. That's happened to me, and I'm very proud that after such upgrade I was able to survive in this position for 5 years as ambassador, because the times obviously that we coincided, me and my appointment, and the global instability, because at that time it was a COVID time. Not many ambassadors or diplomats really were able to succeed in those circumstances and adjust. Here we are. I think we are quite progressing. As you rightly said, we just had the visit of President of Ukraine to South Africa, and as you know, in diplomacy it's considered to be one of the highest and biggest achievement for the diplomat to receive your president in the country.
And apart from this historic visit, are there any other highlights that you would like to speak to us about since you became the ambassador?
Yeah, it's quite a lot. It's an interesting journey, because we can call it kind of renaissance of Ukraine in South Africa, in Southern Africa. The Embassy of Ukraine in Pretoria is responsible for 10 countries in the region.
Wow, that's a lot.
And recently we were able to open 2 extra embassies. The self-sufficient institutions, I would say. Those are in Botswana and in Mozambique. The ambassadors of Ukraine now full-fledged in operation there.
Wow.
And it was the part of the work of the Embassy of Ukraine in South Africa. I can proudly say that together, Ukraine and South Africa, through our joint dialogue and working together, made to Ukraine very clear that diplomatic presence, the economic presence in the region is very important. The diplomatic presence and expanding of this work is that important that new embassies, despite of the war that is continuing, the Russian aggression of Ukraine, despite this fact, we were able to open these embassies. So that would be probably the highlights, because this is your footprint and something that you are re-establishing. But of course, we see quite interesting dynamic in collaboration between the educational institutions. we see the civil society organizations are talking quite often, and sometimes even independently from the diplomatic involvement. Sometimes I'm just invited to come to Dirko and to see my civil society organization, like women empowerment organization, coming to the country and having a floor. That's amazing.
I would like you to elaborate on the key objectives of President Zelensky's visit to South Africa.
We really had a very successful but historical as well visit. That was the first visit not only to South Africa since re-establishment of our independence and the establishment of democratic South Africa. It was the first visit of President Zelensky to African continent. So we think that is very significant and symbolic that it happened particularly in South Africa when your country has the leadership in the G20, but also the country that is leader of the African continent and one of the locomotives of integration in it. We had several objectives on different levels. Of course, one of them is the bilateral, and another one is multilateral. And we cannot have the elephant in the room and not to say that it is happening during the continued Russian aggression of Ukraine, when South Africa has been playing the role, when South Africa is very much present in particular discussions around the consequences and repercussions of war, but also the way forward in terms of how we are going to achieve lasting but just peace. So there were also discussions around the regional integration and how Ukraine can contribute to the sustainable development of African continent in general, and how we can use experiences and knowledge that Ukraine has today to make sure that the goals of 2063 are achieved.
This visit by the president to South Africa is described as historic. I would like you to briefly tell us why was this visit such a landmark moment in Ukraine-South Africa relations?
It was landmark moment for Ukraine, definitely, because we had to make sure during all these years of our re-establishing of relations that Ukrainian, not only people or politicians, but also businesses and scientists are fully aware about the perspectives and where they can be complementary. So in order any visit to be complementary for both sides, there was a lot of homework that was done. And I think that us in Ukraine, also with the tireless work of your embassy in Kiev, under the very harsh circumstances every day, was provided and made sure that there are the particular outcomes and the particular discussions around this visit. For South Africa, same thing here. We had to establish the knowledge about Ukraine, both economically, know-how, but also culturally. That enabled us to have the substantial discussions around around our visit. Unfortunately, the visit had to be cut short.
Mm.
You know this. The visit was planned to be the full day. The President Zelensky arrived the night before, and during all the night Ukraine was severely bombed with combined attack, and the number of victims was that high, and President had to make this decision to go back to Ukraine. But of course we so much appreciating the hospitality of South African side. We also acknowledge the importance of that discussion. Thus President Zelensky decided to accomplish all the political part of the visit. And it is important, I started by saying that Ukrainians already were aware about the importance of this visit. So it was absolutely well received that President had to accomplish that visit politically, and then to come back to Ukraine and to be with his people. Though the cultural and educational and scientific part of that visit unfortunately had to be postponed, but we received a lot of heads up, and the roadmaps in different sectors. I'm sure you are going to ask me about this. And we are looking forward to have this sectoral discussions.
Reflecting on the visit by President Zelensky to South Africa, though the visit was cut short, Ambassador, I do believe that it opened a new chapter of a dialogue on political cooperation. Could you please share some insights into the strategic areas of cooperation that were discussed during that short period?
Yes, we could name immediately the four many important ones, and four of them are actually related to the repercussion of Russian invasion of Ukraine. First one is agricultural sector and the food security issue, because it is already proved by economy through everyday spendings of all South Africans that Russian aggression of Ukraine affected the food prices and the delivery supply chains of agricultural commodities all over the world. Ukraine is the bigger and the major exporter of sunflower oil, for example, one of the biggest producer of wheat. And of course the aggression and annexation and occupation of Ukrainian territories have its own consequences for the world. But there is another side of the story that not often is discussed, because that is something that had to boost particular sectors of not only economy of Ukraine, but also developed the particular technologies and skills. And of course we can speak about the technologization of the agriculture. This is something that Ukraine is very much willing to share. Another part is digitalization. Now, after the severe attacks, a lot of people had to flee homes. That more than 5 million people that today live abroad due to the aggression. Also, a lot of people were internally displaced, so we had to digitalize not only the database, but just the systems of providing services, government services to Ukraine digitally. And we are the first country in the world that is recognizing the electronic document today. And it's only the tip of the iceberg, because you can understand that for that big country as Ukraine is, with more than 40 million people population, we have to have the strong and protected grounds to have this digital system, but also the e-governance. And that's something that Ukraine took immediately in 2022 and continue to develop the experience and technologies there. I think we have a interesting way to go in collaboration in digital sphere, and it's actually embrace not only the technological or communication part of collaboration, but every sector of life of the country, from agriculture to education. The collaboration in the education side is something that we have a tradition and history. A lot of South African leaders and the representatives of a struggle against apartheid were studying and trained in Ukraine. So I think it's also a kind of renaissance when we are talking about studying in Ukraine or sharing our knowledge. This was the part of the discussion, of course. And science and technology, this is the separate discussion that we are having. The energy, collaboration in the energy sector, it's something crucial for both countries. We shown that despite deliberate attacks of Russia on energy infrastructure of Ukraine, we continue to have quite stable supply of energy in Ukraine. We had to adjust and use the alternative sectors of energy, but also we learned the new technologies in that, and this is something that our presidents did discuss. The two ministries received their respective assignments, and we will work for the benefit of our countries.
Indeed. Given the current global security landscape, how do Ukraine and South Africa plan to collaborate on addressing shared security challenges?
We are going and planning to work together for the well-being and prosperity of our respective countries and our peoples. That's what I can guarantee you. Despite the challenges that exist today globally, when we discuss the bilateral relations in this setup, this is where the focus has to be on. But important, most important to mention that this bilateral dialogue and cooperation will continue to ground and to base on the joint values, the values that Ukraine and South Africa had and continue to cherish. I think that we can here speak also about the importance of the values of both democracy, but also the values of international law and United Nations Charter.
What role does Ukraine envision for South Africa in promoting peace and stability, particularly in the regions that were affected by the conflict?
There are a couple of important experiences that South Africa, unfortunately, due to its history, had to go through. And there are no recipes for other conflicts and other countries out of your experience. But in each of conflict, there is something similar. And that similarity is the complexity of bringing sides, and especially those sides that are not interested in making peace, to the table of negotiations. We have today the situation when one country is attacked, the country under the invasion. The territory is annexed and occupied. And another country doesn't want to not only make ceasefire, but it doesn't need peace. So what kind of experience can we take from South Africa to make sure that Russia sits at the table of negotiations and guarantees the just peace not only to Ukraine and Ukrainian people, but to Europe and to the entire world? Because as we agreed with you, the consequences and repercussions can be felt in every corner of this globe. But also the negotiation skills that different organizations and individuals in South Africa have. It's something that is absolutely non-negotiable. You have it. You have this people standing ready to share their knowledge and experience. We have submitted the list of Ukrainian children that were abducted by Russians. And South Africa, as you know, through all the period of full-scale invasion, participating in different forums, international forums, to help us to get our children back, because children are our future. There is another track that you can see a lot recently, particularly after the discussions of negotiation groups in between Ukraine and Russia in Istanbul, when we see the ongoing exchange of prisoners of war. I think that this is also something where South Africa can participate in as a mediator.
Did President Zelensky's visit signal a broader shift in Ukraine's foreign policy towards a more engagement with Africa as a continent?
Exactly, absolutely, yes. It was the signal to both Africa, but also entire world, that Ukraine is prepared and ready to share its best experience and knowledge with every country in the world, but particularly with those who need to boost their development. And that's where we speak about Africa.
Ambassador, I would like us to look a bit into economic and development engagement that have happened. What opportunities for economic cooperation were explored or formalized during that visit? And are there any specific sectors both countries are prioritizing?
We have to look at the interests of both countries, where they are coinciding when we speak about this, but also where they are complementary. We just mentioned with you agriculture and energy. This is where we are coinciding and also complementing to each other. There is another very important one, and recently it has been a lot in the news, which is the mining sector and the minerals and particularly critical minerals, both in Ukraine and in South Africa. I think that experience on both sides can be complementary. We are talking about collaboration in this sector. Another one, it's the science and technology. And all of them somehow are very much interconnected. Economically, it is not anymore about selling and buying something from each other, because we have to be focused on establishing of working places on both sides, actually, and working both complementary, like Ukrainian labor in South Africa and South African labor in Ukraine in the particular sector that requires that knowledge and experience from both sides. So we are talking about establishment of hubs of production of particular products, where the product that we have on the ground can get the added value, where production is happening on the ground, not when you're receiving the ready product from abroad. I think that this is something that is present in every speech of every politician, but we see not a lot of implementation of that. Thus, let me be more detailed in this, otherwise you will think that I'm just giving you the diplomatic answer. Whenever I'm going into some meetings and discussions in South Africa, in Southern Africa, people asking me about two questions: wheat and fertilizers. I sometimes I feel like I'm carrying fertilizers in my bag, but it's the picture, the image that actually we have to explore and to use. And that is why that also became one of the points of discussions between our presidents. And I want to believe that both our sides will be able to achieve opening of the production of fertilizers and the hub that could work not only for South Africa but for the entire sub-Saharan Africa soon.
You touched on the issue that we will talk on the relationship that Ukraine has with the continent at large. So let's now look at the global vision of Ukraine and Africa's role. How does Ukraine view South Africa's role as a leader on the African continent, and what opportunities exist for collaboration on shared goals and priorities?
In this modern world, we see emerging economies, emerging hubs. The industrialization is coming to different parts of the globe, and that provides us with more opportunities of collaboration. There are platforms of integration that are already exist, and Ukraine is willing to focus on those hubs that are emerging and can contribute regionally and that through that integration to the well-being of the peoples and the countries, particularly in Africa. You know better than me that African continent is the future of this globe. The demographics show us very interesting prospects. This is already the youngest continent of the world. That means, I repeat myself, youth is our future. And we have to make sure that this future is sustainable, healthy, educated, and it's not necessarily the order that I want to name it, because all of these factors are important. And of course, Ukraine on its own is not able to guarantee it, and I don't have a big vision of only Ukraine making it, but more the countries like Ukraine focusing on it. I think more perspectives of sustainable and peaceful world for our children we will have. Remember that Ukraine is the biggest country of Europe, and I hope very soon also will be the part of the European Union. It is important for South Africa, I guess, to have that vision of Africa by Ukraine, and we are yet already there in that momentum when it is important for us and our people to understand this. Yeah, I think I will stop here.
So, what message does Ukraine bring to South Africa and the broader African community regarding solidarity, sovereignty, and multilateralism?
Multilateralism is one of the key postulates of Ukraine foreign policy. It's always been. Ukraine is one of the founders of the United Nations. And yet, despite all the handicapability, if I can invent this word, of certain international institution in bringing peace back, we still trust and believe and using the mechanisms of multilateralism and diplomacy to bring back peace to Ukrainian land for Ukrainian people. The message that Ukraine sends about the solidarity is that this is the material that is made of, or material, a solidarity that is made of values. And Ukraine and South Africa particularly are very similar in one thing. We are very family value oriented societies.
Yes.
We are very community values oriented society. But we emerged from the very complicated background, historical background of injustice, where Ukraine was colonized by the USSR when we emerged in 1991 as an independent country, and we are very eagerly trying to establish the democratic valued society and the country. And we need the support the very same way like South Africa needed this support during its struggle against apartheid. When you were receiving this support from many countries, if you remember the Scandinavian countries like Norway and Sweden and Finland, it just came to my mind because those are like the strikes that I have now in my mind. They are such beacons of democracy, but also of solidarity for Ukrainian people today, and they were the same for South Africa. And I'm sorry if I am not mentioning other countries. We are grateful to every partner and country who are standing in solidarity, including South Africa, with the people of Ukraine. I cannot imagine, I can hardly imagine the person who can look at the devastation and repercussions and tragedy and victims of war and feel some pleasant feelings. So the solidarity is important, and solidarity has different faces. It's not necessarily helping us to protect our homes and our people and children who are sleeping tonight with the weapons that we desperately need. It's not only about that. It is about sharing experiences. It's about standing for the values in the international organization, and that's how it brings me back to multilateralism, why it is important.
How does Ukraine plan to deepen cultural exchange and educational ties with South Africa as well as other African nations?
That's a very great one. And I think when we were talking with you in 2017, that was the first year when Ukrainian poets were participating in Poetry Africa Festival. And it was one of the few cultural collaborations that we had at that time. As of today, we are regularly participating in different cultural forums in South Africa, but also inviting South Africans to our cultural forums. We went through such an interesting journey of learning about each other culture that it established the proper grounds today to think about institutionalization of these cultural exchanges. Thus, after the visit of President Zelensky to South Africa, there was a decision taken that we will request the South African side to consider opening of Ukrainian house or presentation of Ukrainian Institute in South Africa that would establish the home for Ukraine's culture, but also for collaboration of Ukrainians and South Africa in this field.
Do we have any Ukrainian diaspora presence in South Africa, and how do they contribute to fostering bilateral ties?
We do have Ukrainians who actually were boosted by the challenge of Russian invasion in Ukraine to unite. It's unprecedented in every country, I think, what happened when Ukrainians united under different umbrellas of organization that they established. We traditionally had many Ukrainians who lived abroad because of different circumstances, like in the beginning of the 20th century, after the revolution that happened in Russia, and what led to establishment of the USSR. A lot of people had or decided to flee and found themselves in Australia or Canada or in the United States, and the organizations that were uniting Ukrainians abroad were established at that time, like World Congress of Ukrainians. Now, due to the new challenge, the new organizations appeared, and in South Africa also we have the not governmental organization of Ukrainians, whose focus is mostly speaking about Ukrainian culture and promote Ukraine as a destination for economic collaboration.
Do you have any upcoming cultural events or exchange programs that you would like to highlight?
Yes, I actually just mentioned that we are hoping that we will get into that active phase of Ukrainian opening of the Ukrainian Institute. Recently, the Ukrainian audio guide was opened in the Museum of Apartheid.
Oh, nice.
This is the initiative of the First Lady of Ukraine, and it happened so that it was the 100th guide that we opened in the world, and this is the first one to be opened in South Africa. I hope that we will have more many. It is boosting tourism, but also it establishes digital platform for the museum to accommodate different languages and to speak about your South African culture through different languages, and we're very eager to help with that. We're working with a number of museums in South Africa on this, and where the audio guides are not available, we are helping to establish the digital platform. So it's the digitalization of the tourism, let's put it this way.
Yeah.
On another hand, we have recently opened the Ukrainian corner or Ukrainian bookshelf in the National Library of South Africa in Pretoria.
Okay.
This is the second one already. We have another one in the Library of Cape Town, and we also have a very tiny, but I hope it will grow, shelf in the Library of Nelson Mandela Bay. And there are visiting artists from Ukraine who collaborate with South African artists in sculpture and painting. Of course, we continue the literature collaboration, translation of Ukrainian poetry into different South African languages, and another way around. Ukrainian how we call it, the Ukrainian readers very curious about the literature of South Africa, and we see a lot of publishers, that was the word I was looking for, sorry, Ukrainian publishers coming to South Africa and collaborating with South African publishers to translate into Ukrainian your authors. I think it's very interesting. Yeah,
very interesting. As we draw towards the conclusion of our discussion, I would like to draw your personal impressions on the visit of the president. What particular thing stood out for you during that moment?
Because it was the first visit to Africa, and I cannot share, because I don't know if President Zelensky ever visited Africa in his personal capacity or not. I think it was so important to touch the ground.
Yes.
Because you can say 100 times how sweet and nice honey is, but unless you try it, you will never understand it.
Yeah.
From this point of view, it was important. But on the serious note, my personal feeling around this was that President definitely will visit Africa often, regularly, and soon.
We're looking forward to that.
Thank you.
What message would you like to share with our listeners about the future of Ukraine and South Africa relations?
I do believe in the joint, successful collaboration. I believe in the future that will bring our people together through the knowledge, through the grounds that we established already. We have to continue to learn about each other and to discover how close we are, because there are more similarities than distinguishes between us, and it is very fascinating to open them. And I feel and I know and I hear the same feedback from the South Africans who are traveling in Ukraine today and coming back. There is a lot of excitement about the prospects, the perspectives, a lot of excitement about something that South Africans like to call the day after. And I think they mean when finally Ukraine can plan it without thinking about the external aggression. So we're really looking forward to tackle the immediate challenges of this globe. We all know them. Climate change is there. We all know the injustices of the society. We have a long way to go with them. We just have to stop the external threat.
And finally, share with us your personal impression of South Africa during your stay in the past few years. How has it been? How have you experienced the people, the country? Did you travel to other parts of the country on a leisurely expedition? Have you tried any of our food?
Oh, that's a separate interview, and I absolutely adore this question, because I think it's important for South African people to hear the sincere impression of foreigners on their country. Though after so many years, I feel myself a part of the country.
You are.
You know that I even have an African name after this many years.
Wow.
As my name means love in Ukrainian, so I have
Okay.
name Lerato.
Lerato. Oh, interesting.
I do like the culture of Brai.
Mm.
I do like food. I think that I already learned in these years how to cook boboti or
Mm.
to brai or to make oxtails or to
Mm.
bake malva pudding. There is no preference whether it is the ocean or the bush. I think you cannot compare these two. You
Mm.
have to be able to do both. But the main value and the main asset of South Africa is definitely its people.
Mm. Mm.
This diversity unites under the umbrella of values. And the solidarity that we as Ukrainians and my community would probably also share it with you. But us as the embassy and diplomats here, we feel a lot of support, continued support, and I really appreciate the people of South Africa during these tragic and difficult times for us.
Mm. My key takeaway from this conversation, you will never know the sweetness of the honey unless you taste it. Thank you so much, Ambassador. I really appreciate you making time to come to the studio. It has been an insightful conversation that we had, and we're looking forward to future engagements with you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
You are welcome.